I never thought the walls of my childhood home could hold more secrets than the books on its shelves. But every stone in that house whispered the same unspoken story, the story of a daughter who had grown up in the shadow of lies. I was born to a middle-class family that lived by the old credo of family first. My father, Daniel, a steel-in-his-face accountant, believed in hard numbers and unyielding discipline. My mother, Elana, died when I was 9, leaving a void that Daniel filled with relentless work. My brother, Max, was the golden child, handsome, witty, and always the center of attention. By the time I turned 27, I had become the family's silent accountant, the one who paid the bills when the other two couldn't or wouldn't. The weight of that invisible role had worn on me for so long that I no longer remembered what it felt like to be merely a child. The first crack it began on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed with Max's text. "Finally, I need the car loan. Can you do it for me?" I could feel my chest tighten as I read his words. He had always borrowed from the family trust fund, our joint account, set aside for emergencies or family needs. Max, who lived a life of excess and cheap thrills, had just landed a new job in New York and needed a vehicle. He had no money to pay for it. He was asking me, his sister, to sign the lease on his behalf. My fingers hovered over the screen. My life had always been about doing what was expected, about saying yes to a family call and no to a stranger's plea. "Sure, Max," I thought, "you're still my brother." But the next message that night was a voicemail that froze my whole world. Danielle's voice on the other side of the line was booming, the same voice that had made Aylana weep when she heard the loss of their wedding ring in a broken vase. He was talking directly to me, the one who had never been invited to the dinner table with a plate of lasagna and a story about the family's future. "If you want help, Max, you're no daughter of mine." I saved the recording. The words, the anger in Danielle's tone, the implied threat that he would cut me off forever if I didn't comply. For years I'd been the one to remember that he had promised his life to me, that he had said that my sacrifice would make the family whole. And now, as I listened again and again to that recorded voice, I felt the truth that no one else could have known. Daniel was never truly on my side. He had been using my sense of duty to hold on to power. A quiet rebellion. Max's text messages were always bold, all caps, an order from a king who never sat down for anyone else. He was the star in his own story. He had built a life on the family's finances. He couldn't even dream of living a life without Eleanor's guidance. Danielle's pride had turned into something darker, a sense that Max was a responsible son, while Max was a child who never learned his lesson. Max had the entire family's attention for the good deeds he did, the charity dinners, the fundraiser at the city hall, the gala for the company's board. He even had the family's joint credit card in his name. But the family trust fund was an invisible cage that kept his debt from being truly his. The day I recorded the voicemail was the day I decided to take my life into my own hands. Daniel had always been a master of numbers, a master of lies. He had written my name on the credit card as a signature. He had promised me that if I signed, his love for me would be eternal, but the love was never unconditional. It was a contract. Max was a charismatic thief of my time and money, and Danielle's words had always been a threat that I ignored. He had promised me that the family would never pay to get a credit card. He had promised me that the family would never help Max. He had promised me that if I didn't do this, I would be in trouble. But in the end, I had no choice but to walk away. The next week, I met with Susan Collins, a seasoned family law attorney who had dealt with the same kind of toxic families before. She listened to my story, heard the recorded voicemail, and asked me to bring all the evidence. I found a file on my laptop with a spreadsheet, a list of unpaid bills, a ledger that Max had used to hide his debt. I did the math, and I discovered the amount that Daniel had hidden in the trust fund, that the family could never know. I printed the spreadsheet, wrote an email to Max that said simply, "I can't do it," and put the voicemail in an email chain that I would send to Daniel. I did everything to show that I was not going to be a part of this charade. The law worked for me. When Daniel saw the recorded message, he called Max to his house and told him that he had found an email, an illegal act that Max was doing. Max, who had never had a good conversation with a father, was left in the dark. Daniel had no patience for a woman who was no longer his daughter, but a threat in a family that never had to do an honest conversation. The confrontation the next night, Max and Daniel showed up at my apartment. They were the same people who had given me life, but now they were also the people who had taken away my love. I held the recorded voicemail and told them that it was proof that they had tried to cut me off. They looked at each other. Danielle's eyes were the same cold ones as always. Max's eyes looked like they were begging me to help. I stood in front of them, and I said no. I said that I was not a tool. I said that I was the one who did the hard work in this family, and that if I was not in their presence, I had no interest in being on their side. I walked them out of my apartment, and the doors closed behind them. The days that followed were filled with a sense of peace. Daniel did not invite them to family dinner because he thought it would punish me. I was free. A life without lies. I started to make my own decisions. I went to a car dealership, not to buy a car for Max, but for myself. I bought a midnight blue sedan outright. The refund from the frozen account gave me the ability to pay for my car with the credit that I had earned myself. I drove around the city, music blasting, living in the silence that I now had. I had always thought that family was a contract that could never be broken. I had been a part of a system that always required me to sacrifice. The story is the story that a woman who had been the daughter and the silent accountant had taken control. She had rewritten the family rules, had become a new woman that was no longer bound by family loyalty that turned into slavery. The family's love was replaced by respect.